Does it taste better? You got questions, I got answers. At least some of them. Let's talk about Switch OLED. I'm still working on the bigger comparison video with the Redbox Switch and Switch Lite, but until then, I've been seeing a lot of really specific questions come up, so I wanted to answer what I can before we get to those videos. So let's check it out. If you want to make sure you see those final comparison videos, make sure to subscribe. Hey, different clothes. One other little disclaimer I want to throw out real quick. Obviously, the Switch OLED is not officially out yet, so some of these things we talk about, especially related to system software, can potentially change. It's possible that there might be a launch day update. There could be things that are going to be launched shortly after, so keep that in mind. Does the old Switch work with the new dock? Yes, in fact, this is something that Nintendo has also clarified in the past, so if you like the fact that the new dock has an Ethernet port and you want to make use of that rather than buying a separate adapter, when they start selling those docks standalone, that is something you can take advantage of. Worth noting, the reverse is also true. You can put a Switch OLED in an old dock and it's still going to work fine. So versus the V2 Switch, the Switch OLED does feel just a little more dense, but it's worth noting that it's not really that appreciable of a difference. If I'm really trying to feel for it, and I'm like holding this one and then holding the other one, I can tell. But if I was just picking up and holding one of them, it's not like, oh man, this is so much heavier. It feels about the same, just a little more dense. Do the JoyCons wiggle noticeably less at all? Yes. This is something that I actually looked for right away because this is one of the things that really bothered me about the regular Switch versus the Switch Lite, because the Switch Lite is the one body, and the regular Switch, well, not awful, just had this little bit of wiggle that would happen while you're holding the Joy-Cons on the side of the Switch. It is still present, you can feel the wiggle, but it is less so than on the regular Switch. I'm not 100% sure if this isn't just due to age, because I've used my regular Switch for a longer period of time and this is fresh out of the box. But even comparing it to the red Mario Switch that we picked up and I haven't used as much, that does feel a little bit more jiggly compared to this one. It's still there, just a lot better. For those of us who are visually impaired, is the OLED Switch a big upgrade over the original? I have the launch model I bought a few months after launch. I cannot play in handheld mode at all with the vision I have. Will the OLED screen fare better? So I don't really consider myself to be an expert on accessibility features, but I do know someone who is, so I reached out to him, Steve Saylor, who is an accessibility advocate and content creator focused on video games, and basically we talked a little bit about it. I shared my experiences with the Switch OLED, and the main kind of conclusion we came to is that obviously, visual impairment is a spectrum. It is not the exact same for every single person. And so, yes, having a bigger screen with larger text can help, but it is not necessarily going to be across the board enough for everyone who uses it. I will say, based on my own experience, that the 7-inch screen on the OLED is larger in person than I think a lot of people realize compared to the 6.2-inch screen on the Switch. It is a sizable difference. Something else that I did not think of or know about, though, that Steve brought to my attention is that OLED displays, for some people, are actually a major improvement. Thanks to the increased amount of contrast, the more kind of vibrancy of some of the colors, it just really helps with the clarity of the image. So again, I can't really give a solid answer for each individual person out there, but in general, the swap to a larger screen and to OLED should be at least a step in the right direction and not necessarily more difficult than a current Switch. Also, by the way, make sure to check out Steve's content. I have him linked down below in the description. He does a lot of great stuff that is not only focused on accessibility stuff in games, but also just good gaming content in general. Where actually are the speakers on this model? I totally get why this is being asked, because they are roughly in the same position they were before, but a lot harder to see. On the previous Switch, you would notice them because they were on the bottom of the bezel where the screen cover is. Now, they're actually located beneath where the glass screen is, and so they're actually really hidden. When you get a nice tight shot, you can see them, but if you're just kind of looking at a locked off top-down shot of a Switch OLED compared to a regular Switch, they're definitely a lot more hidden. Will the new dock scratch the back and front of the console the same way the old one did? Now, I have not 100% confirmed this yet, mainly because I'm not that interested in trying to actively scratch the new Switch OLED. With that in mind, I did at least look at both the docks and compared them, and it looks like there has been a slight change in the shape of the design. The inside bumpers that kind of keep the Switch in place are the same distance apart as they were before, but the overall opening is actually slightly larger on the new dock. So what that means is that you're still going to be having the Switch rub against where those bumpers are, but there's a less chance you're going to be actively rubbing it against the rest of the inside of the dock. While I haven't done any in-depth tests, hopefully with this being a glass screen rather than a plastic one, it's going to be more scratch resistant as well. But again, I haven't actively tried doing that yet because I'm not looking to mess this one up yet. Maybe that's something we try down the line, but for now, I think it's going to have less chance of scratching, but not to an appreciable extent where I'm going to tell people, oh, you don't have to get a screen protector. Is there a burn-in reduction feature? Yes, there is. In fact, it's actually just the same one that's on the regular Switch. This is technically under TV settings, and what it does is causes the image to dim after 5 minutes of gameplay. It's meant to reduce burn-in on actual TV output, but it happens on the Switch console itself as well. So as long as its setting is on, after 5 minutes of inactivity, the screen will dim a little bit, and after continued inactivity, the Switch is just gonna flat out go to sleep anyway. So while that doesn't necessarily completely eliminate, I know, some of the fears that people have about OLED burn-in, it does have that feature built in to make sure that it at least reduces the chances of that happening. Would you recommend a screen protector or not, since it already has a glass screen? Look, yes, having a glass screen means that it should be more resistant to scratching, and maybe you can kind of, go without it and feel a little safer, but generally I favor caution. Yeah, get a screen protector. Especially with how cheap a lot of options are, I just think it's the right move to make. Because yeah, you might think it looks a little better without it, but at the end of the day, it looks a lot better having something that, prevents scratches than getting a scratch that's now there forever. Tested with Hori Split Pad Pro? Well, yep, works no problem. Anything on that new vibrant mode in settings for the visuals. So if you guys haven't seen this, this is actually a new setting that's showing up in the settings menu just for the OLEDs. It's not showing up on the regular Switch interface. And when you go to it in the settings and activate it, it's on by default actually, and when you turn it off, basically, it just looks a little more like a regular Switch. There's definitely some extra work being done to just make a lot of the colors pop a lot more to make use of the OLED screen. You can turn that off, which will make the colors a little more dull. This might preserve a little more battery or something, but generally, I don't see a reason to have it off. A lot of stuff just looks better with it on. Can you use those white Joy-Cons on an older model of the Switch? Yeah, I mean, they're just Joy-Cons as far as anyone's concerned. I'm gonna put this in my pocket, and thank you, Travis. Regular Switch. Take my red Joy-Con off. Yeah, I mean, a Joy-Con's a Joy-Con. They didn't redesign these or anything. As far as I can tell, I haven't opened it up to see if there's anything different on the inside, but generally, this is just another Joy-Con. It's in a new color, it's in white. It is physically the same as the old one. Can you test the fixture S1 clamp on the OLED? Well, here's my fixture right here, and the OLED, and go. When I was messing with the Satisfy grip before, that one I was able to kind of lightly force in because the Satisfy relies on these little rubber stoppers, which did give it a little more give room. It just still made it a very tight fit. Since the fixture is a harder piece of plastic that's designed to go right into the rails, and the rails on this one are just ever so slightly further apart, it's just not gonna work. Maybe there's a way to really force it, but not in a way that I'm at all comfortable trying to do. Has there been any information on OLED burn-in? I mean, nothing official because Nintendo's obviously not gonna be like, hey, here's how fast it takes to burn in or something. I mean, in my own experience, obviously I've only had a couple days and burn-in isn't something that's going to settle in that fast unless I'm intentionally trying to cause damage as fast as possible, which is just not really a priority for me right now. I will say that in terms of preventions, like we mentioned earlier, there is a screen burn-in reduction feature which dims the screen after 5 minutes. The Switch will also go to sleep after a longer period of time of inactivity. Really, the only things that I think could maybe cause you to be worried is if you're playing a game for a very long period of time in handheld mode and there are UI elements that are locked in place that are never disappearing. But assuming you occasionally have to open a menu or go into a cutscene or something, that really shouldn't be the case. I understand why a lot of people are very scared of burn-in. It is something worth being aware of, but at the same time, I do think some people are maybe just favoring that caution a little too much. Where is the SD card slot? It's roughly where it was before. Underneath the kickstand is now this little slot right here that you slide into. So it doesn't actually have a covering. It is going to stick out a little bit, but it's covered beneath the kickstand now. Is the screen laminated? It appears that way, yes. I have not actually taken this apart to verify that, but yeah, for those of you wondering why that might actually matter, with the regular Switch, what you may have noticed before is that you can very clearly tell where there is the sort of top layer plastic screen, and then the actual display looks a little more sunken in. Here, it looks like the display is much more right up against the glass. Does the dock light up? Yes, no. I mean, it's the same as the regular one. There's the little power light. If you were hoping to see like a logo or something light up, no. Could you try the dark mode on this? I mean in the menu to check if it's true OLED, the pixels turn off, for power saving and an overall better look. At least right now, no. If you turn on dark mode with the Switch OLED, in fact I can do it right now, I think we even have it in dark mode. Nope, I have it in light mode. You can see, now to be fair, they don't even call it dark mode, it's just theme and it's black theme. It's a dark gray, it's not a true dark. For those of you that are wondering what exactly that means, well again, with an OLED display, when it comes to showing just pure blacks, all it does is not light up the pixel at all. And so that ends up saving battery if a lot of the screen doesn't have pixels being lit up. In this case, it's still lighting up all that area right there, whereas a true dark mode that could save battery would just have it off. So at least for right now, yeah, dark mode on this isn't really a dark mode, it's more of a dark theme. Is the Switch OLED Bluetooth any different? As far as I can tell right now, in what I have tested and experienced, no, not at all. You get the same warnings that you do on the regular Switch, where you have a limit of up to 2 wireless controllers, more than likely a pair of Joy-Cons. I have used the same headsets with this as I did with the past one, and I haven't noticed any kind of major change in performance. As we all know from a lot of major arguments about what the Switch OLED should have been, according to some people, the internals on this are more or less the same as the regular Switch, and that should hold true for the Bluetooth connectivity as well. When it comes to the brightness of the OLED, how bright is it really? I saw a comment made from Bob about how an ad showed the screen light to be clearly visible on a woman's face in daylight on a train. Is it really bright enough to do that, or is it just marketing? That's probably just marketing. I will say, while I don't have like an actual hard measurement just yet, the OLED display does seem to be brighter than that on the regular Switch. It is a brighter picture for sure, but bright enough to, you know, light up your face in daylight? No, that's marketing. Still good to know, but not quite that extreme. Well, old cases like Satisfy and Skull & Co still fit. So I did test this a little bit already, and I talked about it in my 24 hours with video. If you haven't checked that out, make sure to give it a watch as well. In that video, I showed the Satisfy specifically, where basically no. Like, if you really wanted to make this work with the current version of the Satisfy, you can, but I really wouldn't recommend it. There's a lot of pushback and force. You really have to get it in there, and it probably is gonna end up getting stuck if you do. The deal with the Switch OLED is that it's just ever so slightly wider than the regular Switch. I want to say it's like 3 millimeters or 0.1 inches different, but that is enough to where anything that relied on a tight fit on the regular Switch just isn't gonna necessarily work with this. So depending on the specific case, your mileage may vary, but generally the tighter fit it is on a regular Switch, the more difficult and more than likely impossible it's going to be to use with the OLED. Where can we get that jacket? So this is actually a jacket I bought quite a few years ago. A lot of people were wondering about this in the last video. I bought this a while back. I kind of brought it out of retirement for all the Switch OLED stuff because it just felt right. I re-looked up what site it was. I got it off Merchoid, but it doesn't look like they carry this jacket anymore. They do have an SNES one. I'll go ahead and put that down in the description if you guys want to check it out. It's very similar, but the coloration's a bit different. Less black, more gray. If you really want to take a look, that's the closest thing to this that I can find right now. Does the official adjustable Switch charging stand work for the Switch OLED? Yes, and really, I don't see why any major charging stands wouldn't work. The shaping for the OLED, where it has the little groove here, is the same as a regular Switch. So as long as there's not like a massive charging stand that also requires, you know, fitting sideways a certain way, stuff like this plugs in just fine. What about screen protectors? Do the old ones fit? No. Yes, I mean, you can put an old screen protector on the OLED screen, but there's definitely problems. It will cover at least where the screen is. It doesn't actually cover the full area of where the bezel and everything is, because the bezel goes out further actually than it does on the older Switch. The older Switch screen protectors also have cutouts for things like where the speakers are, which are not placed on the same place as it is on the OLED. So you could put one on and it will cover most of the screen, but it's definitely not gonna look right. And honestly, with how much screen protectors cost, I would just highly recommend grabbing new ones instead, even if you have one sitting around from the old Switch you haven't used yet. So there's a bunch of your questions answered for now. There's a couple things that people asked that I did not address just quite yet because I want to run a few more tests before really giving a firm answer on stuff having to do with battery, connectivity using the Ethernet port, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to know answers to that, look forward to some more in-depth comparison videos coming up this weekend. And if there were any other questions you have that weren't answered in this video, this is probably it for at least a dedicated Q&A, but go ahead and ask it down below anyways, and it might find its way into the comparison video if I'm like, oh wow, no one else asked that, and that's actually really important to check. If you don't want to miss out on those, as always, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.